And welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with the Honorable Joe Oliver, the Honorable Gary Marr. Joe, you wanted to make a point about our last discussion there about where we've come from or where we're going after 5 years?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what Gary alluded to, which is a lot of governments being tossed out of power. And this didn't come from nowhere. Frankly, it came from, in my opinion, bad decision making, which has hurt the people that these governments were supposed to take care of. It's resulted in higher costs, less affordability, and weaker economies and lower standards of living. So the public has, and there's all sorts of causes for that, but the public has understandably revolted against that, and they've asked for new government. We'll see whether the new government can do better.
Indeed, indeed. Well, speaking of current challenges, we do want to talk about the potential tariffs war with the United States, the incoming Trump administration. Uh, what is your analysis of the situation? I'll leave it as open ended at that. Joe, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Well, look, a 25% tariff would, according to the prime minister, be devastating. He talks about horrific losses and so on. Economists have estimated that it would drive the country into a recession if we aren't already in one, according to former Governor Poloz. We are, in fact. We can talk about that. But it would reduce GDP by about 2.5%. It would cost the country 150,000 jobs, drive uh, unemployment up to 7.9%, inflation up to 7.5%, stop the decline in interest rates. It would be a major hit. And I don't think that it's going to happen a full bore, or if it does, for very long, because it would also hurt the Americans. It would fracture the integrated economy and damage supply chain between our two countries. So Canada has to respond in a number of ways. One is directly uh, respond to the request that the president has made.
Mm.
Firm up the border. He doesn't want fentanyl coming in. He doesn't want illegal immigrants, some of whom could be terrorists, undoubtedly are, or criminals. Now, the fact that many more are coming in from Mexico is certainly true, but it isn't enough of an answer. Just the other guy's doing worse. So why don't you give us a break? I don't think that's terribly convincing. We also happen to have a trade surplus with the United States, but that is really a function of their strong economy and strong consumer demand. So it's not necessarily a bad thing from the U.S. perspective. But we have to deal with the legitimate issues that he's talking about, and keep retaliation up there as a counter threat. But we're going to be much more hurt, of course, than they are, because basically 75% or so of our trade is with the United States, and considerably less U.S. trade is with Canada.
Gary Marr, 60% of America's oil and gas comes from Canada. I think that's the number, at least that the Prime Minister is using. How do you take this tariff threat?
Well, let me say this at the outset. About 25 years ago, I bought a used copy of a paperback version of Donald Trump's The Art of the Deal.
Mm.
I paid $3 for it. Remarkably, somebody had used a $5 bill in order to have a bookmark. So I ended up $2 up. But if you read the book, it really lays out what he is doing right now. There's two lessons in that book that I think bear repeating. One is that when negotiating, you can always ask for the sun and the moon and the stars and settle for the moon only. Number two is the weaponization of uncertainty. And I think that we've seen both of these tactics being used by Mr. Trump. And the responses that have been set out by the Prime Minister of Canada and the President of Mexico couldn't be more different. You know, President Scheinbaum of Mexico, I think, was probably taking a page out of the playbook from her predecessor, who, when told to pay for a border wall said basically buzz off. And so that border wall was not built and it wasn't paid for by the Mexican government.
Mm,
And so I agree with Joe that you have to take the things that he thinks are important seriously.
right.
Um, on the
Gary,
fentanyl side,
hold that thought. We'll get into fentanyl after the break. We'll be back after these messages.